Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Aaron Porras here with ILTV's morning briefing. The two victims in yesterday's execution-style terror attack have now been named as 28-year-old Kim Levengrond YEHEZKEL and Ziv HAJBI. Kim lived in Rishon LeZion with her husband and one-year-old son and was laid to rest Sunday evening in the Rosh Ha'ain cemetery. Her husband, Guy, sobbingly promised to raise their son in exactly the same way that she would have wanted, saying, quote, "I'll never forget you, I love you, and you will always be my best friend," end quote. Her father, Rafael, lamented not being able to protect his daughter or be with her in her moment of need, and Kim's mother, Chava, completely stricken with grief, said she refused to accept that her daughter was now lying in a grave. Friends and extended family also shared their memories and sorrows as the soil was tossed over the grave. Ziv HAJBI, a 35-year-old married father of three, was living in Rosh Ha'ain and was just shy of his 36th birthday this weekend when he and Kim were brutally gunned down Sunday morning at work. He too was remembered by his mother as an angel and by his friends as a model son, father, and husband. Thankfully, the third victim is recovering from moderate wounds sustained by the gunfire. As for the terrorist suspect, he's still reportedly on the run, but the IDF has identified him as 23-year-old Palestinian Ashraf Walid Sulaiman Na'alawa. Na'alawa, from the northern West Bank, was reportedly employed as an electrician for the Alon Group company in the Balkan industrial complex where the attack took place. But Sunday morning, arriving at the factory just shy of 7:40 and armed with an automatic submachine gun, Na'alawa went up into the offices on the second floor where he reportedly zip-tied Kim YEHEZKEL's hands and shot her dead at close range. He then shot the second female victim in the stomach before she was eventually evacuated to Beilinson Hospital in moderate condition. Finally, he shot and killed Ziv HAJBI just prior to fleeing the scene. Now, it's now been nearly 30 hours since the attack, and security forces have yet to apprehend him, though. But the IDF, Shin Bet police, and Palestinian Authority security forces are all on the hunt for Na'alawa. Further, the IDF has mapped Na'alawa's family home for demolition, and his brother, sister, and several other members of his family and friends have been arrested or detained in connection to the attack. The number of detentions is not yet clear, and some, including the sister, have already been released, but the IDF is thoroughly investigating every possible lead, and there are some interesting clues. Na'alawa didn't appear for work for the last few days prior to the attack, and though he's been praised by terror groups like Hamas, there's no evidence that he was affiliated with any specific group. Also, Na'alawa reportedly left a suicide note for his friend 3 days ago. The friend worked at the same Alon Group factory with Na'alawa and has been arrested for not bringing the note forward sooner. Regardless, the manhunt continues, and security forces warn that Na'alawa is still considered armed and dangerous. The residences of fair trial of SARA Netanyahu began yesterday in the Jerusalem Magistrates Court, with roughly an hour of opening arguments, leaving many on all sides with an uneasy feeling. SARA was indicted in June in connection to the affair, which alleges that she, with the help of former senior Prime Minister's office official Ezra Saidoff, fraudulently diverted over $100,000 worth of taxpayer funds towards paying for chefs and prepared food orders at the Prime Minister's residence despite having a full-time kitchen staff available. At least 15 invoices for chefs were falsified as well to hide what was paid. SARA is suspected of demanding such treatments, while Saidoff is suspected of directing resident staff in how to hide the evidence and falsify documentation. The total defrauded amount comes out to around 393,000 shekels, and Netanyahu's legal team argued that the case should never have been filed in the first place, though, that the charges are ridiculous, and that the prosecution is deliberately attempting to both withhold pertinent documents from the discovery and complicate the trial with extra judges on the panel. The prosecution responded, however, that in similar cases with similar allegations and severity, a 3-judge panel was appointed. As for Ezra Saidoff, his attorney, Yoshua Reznik, mostly lamented that his client was even there, claiming Saidoff was just being sucked into efforts to go after the Netanyahus. All defendants continue to maintain their innocence, but either way, the next hearing is scheduled for November 13th. Meanwhile, as SARA Netanyahu is now faced with defending massive and allegedly fraudulent purchases, the Finance Ministry has just blocked the official request for 450,000 shekels, or $125,000, made by the Prime Minister's office for supposed renovations. Legally, the state is required to maintain the Prime Minister's residence, but not to improve or modify or renovate it. Thus, the request was found to be excessive and was rejected. A second request of 100,000 shekels for waterproofing and repairs was then made, but the state has not yet made a decision on this latest requisition. Spanish journalist Julio de la Guardia has just been charged with manslaughter after running over and killing ultra-Orthodox pianist Chaim Tukachinsky while under the influence of alcohol. The hit-and-run incident took place last month in Jerusalem. Reports say LaGuardia fled the scene, ran a red light, and drove over the speed limit to add fuel to the fire. Prosecutors requested LaGuardia be held in custody until after the legal proceedings against him begin. Chaim Tukachinsky was a 31-year-old ultra-Orthodox pianist, composer, and conductor. Tukachinsky was a former resident of Kiryat Motzkin, but left his ultra-Orthodox yeshiva at 18 in favor of attending a music academy in Jerusalem, where he excelled in his undergraduate and graduate degrees. Tukachinsky was killed in central Jerusalem's Paris Square while walking back from the Western Wall on the first night of Sukkot. The suspect, LaGuardia, drove away and was arrested 1 hour later with a blood alcohol count 3 times higher than the legal limit. LaGuardia told police he was being harassed by 3 Palestinians following his car on motorbikes at the time, and that they were trying to corner him. He said he was trying to get away from them when the incident occurred. But after, he stopped a short distance from the accident, not knowing what happened, but left quickly when locals approached him, fearing then that they would attack him. He later approached a police vehicle and told the officers that it was likely him that they were looking for. LaGuardia worked as a foreign correspondent in Israel for many years for a few Spanish outlets, but was kicked out of Israel in 2011 after a domestic dispute. It's unclear how he was issued a new work visa and allowed to return back to the country. In other news, Morocco's King Mohammed VI has made a surprise decision to incorporate education about the Holocaust in the country's future curriculum. His decision was made public last week at the United Nations General Assembly by the Moroccan Education Minister Said Amazi. King Mohammed stated that anti-Semitism is not fought with military or money, but rather through education and culture. He said that anti-Semitism manifests as an admission of failure, insufficiency, and the inability to coexist, continuing that, quote, "The battle against this plague cannot be handled carelessly," end quote, and that this new education was in the interest of our children as future beneficiaries and ambassadors. Israeli officials like Michael Oren praised this decision as well, tweeting that the king is sending a profound moral message to the world by introducing Holocaust studies into the education system. He ended saying that this is a sign that there is indeed hope. That's all for now. I'm Aaron Porras, and see you later with our main daily broadcast from Israel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.